Is this Overwatch? No. This is Sparta. What's up, guys? I'm BTC. There's been an update to the Overwatch 2 beta, and it includes quite a few balance changes in this patch. Also, they have now enabled the open queue, so it should be a little bit easier and faster to find matches. Let's go into the training area, and we're going to take a look at those changes. The first thing is that Hamid has been re-enabled. He had a game-crashing bug. They had to take him out for a little bit, but now he is back. So the first character is going to be Sojourn. They gave her a couple of buffs, which seems
all of us
kind of ridiculous given how strong this character is. So the first thing is that they've increased the size of the railgun projectile. So it was increased from 0.05, which is really, really small, and it was increased to 0.1. So the size of the projectile has been doubled. It's still going to be fairly tiny, and you still need to be pretty accurate in order to actually land it. But at least it shouldn't be as ridiculous as it was before. Like, even that, like, you're still, like, I still made a miss on that because it wasn't quite close enough. So let's see how, there you go. So it's a tiny, tiny bit bigger, should be a little bit easier to do that. Now, another thing is that they reduced the cooldown on the power slide. So now, it's only 6 seconds instead of 7. I don't understand what they're doing, because this character is already ridiculously powerful. I can't believe that that disruptor ability does 200 damage. That is ridiculous by itself. It's a gigantic AoE slow, and it also does 200 damage. Anyways, I don't know why they're buffing this character. I can understand the change to the railgun because, yeah, that was kind of annoying. But buffing the power slide doesn't make any sense to me. Next up is Soldier 76, who got a couple of changes, most of them being nerfs. The first is that your primary attack, the damage went from 20 down to 18. That is a massive, massive nerf because every single hit is now going to do 2 less damage. So over time, that definitely will add up. Next up is the sprint, which was nerfed from an extra 50% down to an extra 40%. Though keep in mind, Soldier 76 does have the passive movement speed buff that the DPS role gets, but they are still nerfing his sprint. And next up is kind of a weird one. So Tac Visor is getting changes. So it will now allow for a critical hit if the attack would have normally been a critical without it running. However, it no longer removes the fall-off damage. So basically, if you let me show you here. So
I've got you in my sights.
It's critical hits on him, but it's normal hits on him. So if you can actually aim on the enemy, then you get the critical that you should have originally gotten, which makes sense. Though the trade-off is that it completely removes the fall-off damage protection, which means that now when you're attacking someone at longer range, you're going to do far, far less damage because you have that damage fall-off. So I don't think this is a very good trade. Yes, they should include the critical thing, but I don't think removing the fall-off is a good idea. Next up is Sombra, who's getting a nerf to her movement speed as well. This is for the stealth. It was reduced from an extra 65% down to 50%, and apparently this is going to be a theme with these DPS characters. Essentially, they thought that certain DPS were just moving way too fast because of extra movement speed abilities. So, like Soldier and Sombra, they're nerfing those abilities rather than nerfing the movement speed of the DPS role across the board, because all the DPS get that extra little buff. Next up is Roadhog, who's getting a pretty interesting change to his ultimate. They're not actually modifying the amount of damage or any of that sort of stuff. Instead, they're changing it from a channeled ultimate to a transform ultimate. So the difference here is that channeled ultimate, like Pharah or Reaper or McCree, when you press the button, it puts you into a certain mode, and then you can get stunned out of that mode and it ends the ultimate. But a transform ultimate like Genji means that you kind of switch the type of attack that you're using, and even if you get stunned, you can still keep using it. So let me show you what happens here. So now you start winding up, but you don't actually use it. And you can also use other abilities while you have the ultimate active. Now, the one thing about this that I don't particularly like is the fact that it doesn't really seem to last long enough, especially if you're trying to, if you're trying to weave in other attacks, or other abilities. So the hook is pretty fast, and that's fine, but if you tried to use the take a breather, you basically just wasted half of your ultimate. So yeah, it's nice that you have the option to use the abilities, but I think that the timer should get paused, or maybe just the overall length of the ultimate should be increased a little bit. Otherwise, this is a pretty good change for Roadhog. Next up is Winston, who gets a nice little buff, and that is for your secondary attack. Instead of using 20, it will now use only 12. So you get to use it more often before you have to reload. So, nice little change for Winston there. Next up is going to be Hammond, and they made it so that the knockback was increased by 36%. So you will now move enemies around 36% more than before. That's going to be pretty significant for a lot of the disruption that Hammond is capable of doing. Next up is Zarya, who is getting a nerf to her ultimate. The duration was reduced from 4 seconds down to 3.5 seconds, and they say that it's because it was overperforming, but the problem is that Zarya is not all that great of a tank to use in this new game mode, especially considering the fact that you're going to be in front of your team most of the time, right? So you're going to be standing in front of them, so you can use your own barrier, but if you want to use the other one, you have to turn around to actually use it. So this wasn't an issue when Zarya was like a backup tank, because you would be behind Reinhardt and you would always be able to just, hit him with the bubble. But in the new way of doing things, I don't know, Zarya just seems to underperform, and now they're nerfing her ultimate. It's not like a tremendously massive ultimate. It's still 3.5 seconds, which is probably good enough to deal with most situations, but yeah, I don't know. Zarya just doesn't seem like she's all that great in this. Moving on to the supports, a couple days ago, the Overwatch team told us that there would be significant changes and reworks to the support characters because they were really falling behind. However, I don't see any of that in this patch, or if they were referring to these changes, then they were massively overselling it. However, having said that, Mercy and Moira are not in this balance patch, so maybe they're doing reworks on those two. The rest of them, these are getting like small changes, and we'll go over that right now. So the first one is Lucio, who is getting a nerf to his self-healing. So there's a penalty for his self-healing. You get less than your teammates get, and they've increased that. So instead of having a 30% penalty, it's now a 60% penalty. And on the one hand, I don't think that they should be nerfing Lucio. I think that they should be buffing the other supports, because right now Lucio is the only support that's really any good in the beta. So I don't think they should be nerfing him. They should be bringing the other ones up to the same base level as Lucio. However, in this particular case, I've noticed that Lucio is way too good at stalling the objectives in the beta. Not only because of his self-healing, but because of his movement abilities, because of his wall ride and all that sort of stuff. But also, keep in mind that the healers now have an extra passive that lets them heal really, really fast if they're not taking damage. So, basically, Lucio is just way, way, way too good at stalling, so they've nerfed that a little bit, which I think is good, but it still means that they need to buff the other characters. Speaking of, we'll go to Baptiste. They gave him a small buff. They increased the amount of healing ammo from 10 to 13, which means you can use it 3 more times before you need to reload. This is nice. It's not going to change the position of Baptiste. He's still kind of garbo. Next is Ana, who is getting a buff and a nerf. So first of all, the healing, just like with Baptiste, it has been increased. So it went from 12 to 15. However, she did get a nerf to the Bionade. The duration was reduced from 4 down to 3 seconds, and that's for both the enemies and the friendlies. It now only lasts for 3 seconds. And the reason for this is because essentially it's 5v5, and they were saying that the Bionade, as it currently was just too strong in 5v5s with only one tank character. Next up is Zenyatta, who is getting kind of an interesting ability. I already showed it at the beginning. It's a new passive, which is called Snap Kick, and what this does is his quick melee will now do... so his quick melee damage was increased by 50%, so he does more melee damage than the others, and it also has knockback. So not only does it do more damage, it also now knocks them back. So Zenyatta is now a character that you can use to put people into the Ilios well. Wait, what? Oh. I was wondering, was he stuck on something? Hold on. Oh, he was like sliding down. I was like, well, I'm wondering what was going on. Anyway, so more damage, and also you get the knockback, which is kind of cool. Also, he's gotten a health increase, so his shields went from 150 up to 175, so now you can see that he has 225 total, which is nice. It should help increase the survivability. The only problem with this is I feel that this is more novelty than anything else, because the fact of the matter is, when you have characters like a Genji or a Tracer that are flanking you, and they're going after the Zenyatta, they're not going to be right next to you. They're going to be at this range. So this is not going to do anything. Like, they're still going to take you out. Or Sombra, whoever. They're not going to get into right up next to you. They're going to stay a little bit of distance away, and they're still going to take you out. So the extra... So it's a novelty. I mean, it's cool. You'll be able to put people into the Ilios well and stuff. It's not an actual defensive thing. It's just a gimmick, which is kind of unfortunate. Next up is Brig, another support that has been kind of struggling in the beta, and she got a buff to Shield Bash, where they have doubled the knockback. And let me show you how impressive this doubled knockback is. Ready? Ready? Are you ready? This is impressive. Oh, man! Look at that! Double knockback! Doubled. It's been doubled. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. That is game changing. It's garbage. It's worthless. This is not gonna change anything for the character. This is almost as close to a worthless buff as you can get. I mean, yay! It pushes them back a tiny bit more. So I mean, I guess it's better than completely nothing, but it doesn't change anything for the character. So when they were promising significant changes to the supports, I really hope that this is not what they were mentioning, because these changes are very lackluster, or in some cases just total garbage. So they're the balance changes. I mean, some of them are good. I like the ones for Roadhog and stuff. I don't comprehend why they're buffing Sojourn. That doesn't make any sense. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, some of these changes are okay. Some of them are just they're just like, it's like they're throwing stuff at a dartboard and they're just picking random stuff, but whatever. Those are the changes for the balance. At least you can play a little bit faster now with the open queue. But anyways, what do you guys think about these changes? Let me know down below. A big thanks to all the Paragons and other channel members for all your support. If you'd like to become one and grab some cool rewards, click the join button down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.